And welcome back, folks. This is the Appraiser Coach Podcast. Welcome to another mini-sode. My name is Dustin Harris. Just a quick thought for you today, but first I want to remind you that we are sponsored by ANow Software. ANow is what we use in my appraisal business to manage everything that goes on here at the appraisal firm. You can find out more by going to anow.com/coach, anow.com/coach. Well, folks, had an idea the other day that I want to float to each of you that you might want to utilize in your own business. This will be a short episode. I just wanted to tell you about an idea that came up, stemmed from a thing that I've actually been doing for several years in my office, and that is trying to redirect, okay? And what I'm talking about is with regard to employees. So, yes, it is true that I own an appraisal business. Yes, it is true that I am the boss. Yes, it is true that as the owner, I want to make sure that everything goes well. Yes, it is true that not everything always goes well, that there are certain things that happen that sometimes are out of my control, sometimes are in my control, but you know, the buck stops here, as the phrase might go. In other words, everything lies on my shoulders as the owner. That being said, I often find, and I'm sure you find this as well, those of you who have employees, I often find that sometimes employees rely a little too much on the boss, rely a little too much on the owner, rely a little too much on the chief appraiser. Meaning, I have found, and I found this with my kids as well, okay? At home, I found this with my kids, and I'll share an example here in just a little bit. But I find that employees, instead of figuring things out by themselves, will often turn to me just because I'm in the office. In fact, I was telling my wife just over the weekend, she's like, why don't you spend very much time in your office? And I said, honey, I get nothing done in the office. She goes, what do you mean? You got a nice little office there, you now got a standing desk, you know, super cool, right? Well, yeah, it depends on what I'm trying to do. If I'm trying to write, if I'm writing my newsletter for the All-Star team, for example, or if I'm writing a blog post or you know, just answering emails and what have you, I'll tell you folks, I would much rather sit in a coffee shop somewhere in a soft chair with Wi-Fi than I would sit in my office any day. Why? Because when I'm here, I'm here. It makes sense? When I'm here, my employees know I'm here. And things that they would normally probably kind of take care of on their own, they ask me because I'm here. Okay? They turn to me and say, hey, Dustin, what should I do here? What should I do there? Well, I've come up with a new way to handle that. And I want to tell you about that after the break. But first I want to tell you about ANow Software. Speaking about handling things, folks, ANow will handle your appraisal office. I mean that. I mean, I'm telling you, it will take care of the orders that are coming in, where we're at in the process. It will allow you as a business owner to look at all the analytics and find out, you know, statistically. I'm a stat freak. You know, I want to know how many appraisals I did last month. I want to know how many appraisals I did last week. I want to know if we're up, if we're down, if we're doing more non-lender work than lender work, you know, vice versa. I want to know all of that information, and ANow allows me to do that. Folks, you can check out ANow right now by going to anow.com/coach. That's anow.com/coach. I tell you, it is awesome having a program that will help me to be a better business owner, and that's what ANow does. You need to check them out too. Once again, anow.com/coach. All right, folks, we are back. We are talking about annoying things that our employees do. And one of the most annoying things to me is, I hired you to do a job. Just do the job, right? And so often our employees, just because we're in the office, they turn to us and they say, well, what should I do here? And this person said this, and how should I handle that? Okay, I've got a new way to handle that, and it's kind of a riff off of an old theme that you've seen. You know, you might be driving down the road, and on somebody's back window, you might see the letters WWJD. Right? You've seen that before. They might have a band, a bracelet on their wrist that says WWJD. We all know what that means, okay? My new mantra is WWYD. WWYD, okay? And basically it comes from a much longer acronym that just doesn't make a lot of sense to say every time. But WWYDIIWH. Ready? WWYDIIWH. And it stands for, what would you do if I weren't here? Okay. Okay, that's my new mantra. Again, I just say WWYD for short, and I've done this. I've used this. My employees now know what this means, right? WWYD is short for what would you do if I weren't here? And I really want them to answer that question. I'll tell you, there's nothing better training-wise than to do that, to turn to your employees and say, what would you do if I weren't here? Well, I guess I would da-da-da-da-da. Now, if the answer is I'd call you, that's not an answer. No. What would you do if I weren't here at all and you couldn't reach me? What would you do? Well, I would probably do this, but I don't know if it would be right. Well, guess what? I'm giving you permission to make mistakes, and that's okay. Now, I'm not saying that your employees should be able to handle and do everything, okay? Don't misunderstand me. Can't wait for the hate mail to come in on this one, right? Dustin, are you telling me that you're going to let your employees... No. Folks, I'm talking about the stuff that they could handle anyway or should. I'll give you an example with my kids. Okay, just the other day, just after I came up with this little mantra, this little acronym, my boys were supposed to take the garbage from the property, our property, out to the street so the garbage man could get it, right? And we live in Idaho, and it's cold right now, and there's been some melting and freezing this last couple weeks, and consequently the garbage was frozen to the ground. And I sent them out, and I was very busy. I said, hey, you guys need to go take care of the garbage. Okay, Dad. And they ran out there, and 5 minutes later they're in saying, Dad, I can't get the garbage to move. It's frozen in. What am I going to do? And I said, well, what would you do if I weren't here? And they sat, and they thought for a second. They said, well, you are here. Okay, what would you do if I wasn't here? WWYD. What would you do? And the answer was, well, we would probably get the four-wheeler out, and we'd hook up the chain, and we'd pull it out that way and get it unstuck. And I said, well, great, here's the keys. And guess what? 5 minutes later, they had the garbage unstuck, and they were pulling it out to the road. What would you do if I weren't here? Remember that mantra as you deal with your employees, as you deal with your kids, as you deal with anybody else that you don't want to be bothered by. Check it out, WWYD, IIWH, or WWYD for short. What would you do? Turn it back on them. Empower your employees to make decisions that they can and should be making. Thanks for joining me, folks. I want to mention that we are still open. The Dream Team usually has at least one seat open in each of our cities. I do know there's one, as of this recording, there is one open in Washington, D.C., there may be one open in Chicago. There is one open in Salt Lake, and there are several open in the new Dream Team that we just started in Las Vegas. So if you're interested in that, get on my website, check it out. Folks, thanks for checking us out and being a part of the Appraiser Coach podcast. We'll catch you next time.